Good afternoon, this is Sage. You are watching 𝐾𝐞 TV live from Sydney. And this is the Sectoral Pulse by 𝐾𝐞 TV, a special show covering all sectoral movements from the markets for the day. Australian shares were little changed on Friday, looking past a weak finish overnight on Wall Street as selling in local miners and energy firms offset gains in banks and healthcare companies. The S&P/ASX 200 index was largely unchanged at 7,053.90. It was on track to lose about 0.2% for the week, snapping a 4-week winning streak. The S&P/ASX 200 is lower today, dropping 0.21% to 7,040.30. The bottom performing stocks in this index are Kogan.com Limited and Blackmores Limited. The index has lost 0.33% for the last 5 days, but sits 0.77% below its 52-week high. All three major US indexes finished about 1% lower on Thursday, following reports that President Joe Biden planned to double the capital gains tax and raise income taxes on the wealthy. Elsewhere, Japan's Nikkei declined 1.36%, while MSCI's broadest index of Asia-Pacific shares outside Japan closed 0.4% higher overnight. In New Zealand, the benchmark S&P NZX 50 index swung between positive and negative territory and was little changed. It was on track to lose 0.8% for the week. The top percentage gainer on the benchmark was Mercury NZ Limited, adding 3.28%, while the top loser was Vista Group International, slipping 2.6%. Moving on to some important sectoral movements. In Australia, miners were the biggest drags on the benchmark, losing 1%, with mining giants BHP Group and Rio Tinto falling about 1.8%. Copper-focused Australian miners and explorers reported declines in their stocks as copper prices slipped on Thursday on worries about China capping commodities prices to curtail inflation, and as investors locked in profits after a rally. Oz Minerals Limited shed 3.6% to hit the lowest since 30th of March 2021. Aries Resources Limited and Castillo Copper Limited declined over 2% each. Sandfire Resources NL was down 2% as well. Energy firms were down 0.6%, with Oil Search leading the losses on slashing its 2021 investment expense. Australia's energy sub-index is on track for a weekly decline of over 4% and is set for its biggest weekly fall since the week ending January 29th. Crude prices are set to post a weekly drop on concerns that surging COVID-19 cases in India will drive down fuel demand in the world's third biggest oil importer. Top independent gas producer Woodside Petroleum is set to shed over 5% for the period, while Santos was down 3%. Papua New Guinea-focused oil and gas explorer Oil Search eyes a weekly fall of more than 6%. Financial stocks edged higher. Australia-New Zealand Banking Group added 0.4% and National Australia Bank added 0.6%. Troubled wealth manager AMP jumped to the top of the index, advancing 7.6% after it announced plans of a spin-off and rebranding of its unit AMP Capital's private markets business, ending talks with Aries management to sell the business. And now, let's move on to the currency market update. The dollar was stuck into a narrow trading range on Friday as traders contemplate the next moves by major central banks ahead of a US Federal Reserve meeting next week. The euro nursed losses after European Central Bank President Christine Lagarde squashed expectations that policymakers will start to consider a tapering of bond purchases due to an improving economic outlook. The Fed Chairman Jerome Powell is likely to repeat Lagarde's message that talks of tapering is premature, which would put downward pressures on Treasury yields and cap the dollar's gains against most currencies. The dollar stood at 107.90 yen, close to a 7-week low, and the euro bought $1.2017 after falling 0.2% on Thursday. The British pound was quoted at $1.3842 following a 0.6% loss in the previous session. The dollar was little changed at 0.9169 Swiss francs. The Fed's next meeting ends on April 28th, and while no major policy changes are expected, investors are paying close attention to any comments about the chance of scaling back monetary easing in the future. Rising coronavirus vaccination rates and an improving economic outlook are reasons to be optimistic, but investors are scaling back expectations for a withdrawal of monetary easing after Lagarde said talk of phasing out emergency bond purchases is premature. Data on manufacturing and services activity in both the United States and Germany are due later on Friday, which could support positive economic sentiment, but the dollar and the euro are unlikely to move much as investors stick to the sidelines before the Fed's meeting. Elsewhere, the Australian and New Zealand dollars steadied on Friday, but traders said risks are pointed to the downside due to a recent weakening in commodity prices. Moving on to the commodity market update. Crude oil prices stepped up on Thursday on supply concerns after Libya's oil production tumbled to about 1 million barrels per day in recent days due to budgetary issues. The Brent crude oil futures for June delivery traded 0.14% up at $65.69 US per barrel, whereas WTI crude oil futures traded 0.67% up at US $61.84 per barrel. The national oil companies and their subsidiaries, including National Oil Corporation, AGOCO, Sectoral Oil Company, are facing severe budget issues since the past year. India reported the world's highest daily spike of COVID-19 cases on Thursday. At the same time, Japan, the fourth largest importer, is hit by the third wave of coronavirus. The largest carbon emitters, including China, the US and India, pledged to reduce their emissions at the 2-day Global Climate Summit. The event began on the occasion of Earth Day and was virtually attended by representatives of 40 countries to combat greenhouse gas emissions. Japan's Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga has committed to nearly double its target for emission cuts by 2030. Canada's Prime Minister raised its country's goal to cut of 40 to 45% by 2030 from its previous target of 30%. Brazil has also committed to becoming carbon neutral by 2050. The US also decided to lower its emission by 26 to 28% against 2005 levels by 2025. Thanks for your time watching, and that is all for now. But do stay tuned to 𝐾𝐿KIND TV for more live market updates. Holly and myself will be back for more news, markets, economy and diverse themes and sectoral movements soon. This is Sage signing off.